Sonoma,
Sun 91.3.
Hello, Sonoma and friends from around the world. You are listening to Some Like It Hot on Sun FM 91.3 KSVY Sonoma. And it is another gorgeous day here in the Valley of the Moon. Although the moon is not coming up at this hour anymore because it is lighter later. But what is coming up for the hour is a little bit of Frank Sinatra tunes. Being that it is the 15th anniversary of his passing on to Hollywood heaven. So we're going to remember him that way. But first, kicking off the hour is the incredible writer, author, Stephen Meloan. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is a thrill to have you. And by the way, I have to say, I love your name, Meloan. It just sounds like a character out of a book. Have you used it in any of your books yet?
No, I have not, no. But, and you know, spelling-wise, it's not the kind of Irish Malone. It's Meloan. So, you know, my brother and I looked up some stuff, and I think it's French extracted, but, you know, where they'd put in a vowel where there used to be an apostrophe, you know, like M apostrophe probably at some point. You know, my brother was in Paris, and they were saying, "Oh, Monsieur Meloan," you know. And he thought, "Oh, well, that's how it's, that's where it comes from."
Well, there's a saying, right? It doesn't matter how you say my name as long as you call me.
Yeah.
For work or for dinner or something, for breakfast.
That would be a good song title.
Wouldn't it? I've got a lot of good titles for books, for songs, you name it. And the lovely Lisa Summers was on here last week, and she was reading some of her poetry. And I know both of you are going to be doing a reading Thursday night. Is that correct, at the Epicurean Center?
Yeah, exactly. There's going to be a whole lineup of people, you know, writers and musicians, and it's going to be kind of a local lit music happening. Yeah.
Now, what does a local lit music mean?
Well, yeah, I think Demetra, who is also part of the crowd and that I know from my son's school, she has a band called Static People.
Right.
And so it's sort of like a punk band. So some portion of Static People is going to be there. I don't know exactly all of them. Yeah, maybe half people, and it's going to be kind of semi-acoustic, so it won't be full-blown, blow the roof off the place punk, but some aspect of that, and then a variety of writers.
That sounds so exciting. It'll be the first time that I'll be attending that place because you and Lisa and Daedalus and half people will be there.
Yeah.
So I'm really thrilled. And what's so fun is Lisa was telling me, I didn't even know you were local. So I'm so thrilled that you were local and you're able to be here live with me. And you've done quite a few things in your career. Right now you are writing The Shroud, which is really exciting. It sounds very interesting. So I'm just going to, dive right into this. Would you like to tell us a little bit about The Shroud?
Yeah, basically it's co-authored with my brother. And basically, it's a what we like to call a science adventure novel. So the story takes place in the near future, and it's sci-fi on a certain level, but it's more character driven too. It's not just like a lot of far out rocket ships and stuff like that. So it takes place in the near future, and a genetic research team from the National Institutes of Health has been asked by the Vatican to use the latest findings of the Human Genome Project, which has been a lot in the news in the last 10 years, to shed new light on the authenticity of the Shroud of Turin. Everybody's fairly familiar with that, I think. Very Dan Brownish kind of stuff. And so as the inquiry proceeds, it appears that this is indeed the burial cloth through their scientific findings of the historical Jesus, and then the vestments' bloodstains open up the possibility of cloning. So you can sort of imagine where all that might lead.
Yeah, that gives me chills. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So of course, that creates sort of global cataclysms of the battles between science and religion that we see in this era already. And so it takes on global proportions and takes them from Washington, D.C. to Israel to Belize, and ultimately sort of transforms the lives of everyone involved in the adventure. So
I love films like that. I love to be swept away. And, well, would you say that it is, do you consider it a religious fiction? I mean, how would you describe the genre?
No, not at all. I mean, we've used the book as a vehicle to sort of explore the schism between science and religion, but it's not coming from like a religious place. It's basically sort of disengaging from religion in order to better explore sort of spirituality and you know the science religion divides that you see in the news and whatnot. So yeah, it's not at all. It's more along the lines of if you saw the movie Contact. With,
yes, I loved Contact.
So it was actually very very heavily inspired by Contact.
Carl Sagan.
Yeah, because if you remember, there was the whole thing there where there was the Matthew McConaughey character and there was the scientist, and she's having these debates with him about, you know, science and rationality versus belief.
And is there a God? Do you believe in God?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's very along the lines of Contact, you know, whereas rather than alien contact, it's sort of there are a lot of genetics to the whole thing. So
that sounds so exciting. Okay, so this is a book. Now, when you write this, do you foresee it being up on the big screen? I mean, how do you go from step A to B to the big screen?
Well, we're actually exploring that. In other words, my brother and I both come from. I write about technology too, journalistically, and I actually had a screenwriting job with an online kind of what they used to call webisodics. You know, it was sort of like a weekly, episodic adventure on the web. And so, you know, we wrote real scripts where there would be dialogue and descriptions of what would be on the thing. And then my brother, meanwhile, had a short story optioned where he got into the whole Hollywood machine and was taking luncheons with HBO execs and whatnot. So we are actually because a lot of readers have said like, wow, you know, I could totally see this as a movie.
Definitely.
You know, when's the movie coming out? You know,
right,
so we are kind of exploring that. That's
and what part do you see me playing in it?
Well, we will definitely.
We'll call you. We'll do lunch.
Yeah, we'll do lunch. Yeah.
Because it does give me the chills, and I do want to be a part of it somehow, some way.
Yeah. Co-producer,
something, bringing you your lunch.
No, we'll go way beyond that.
I've done a few things with Daedalus. You know, he can vouch for me and for my acting skills. And I promise you, you know, I'm not looking for a part as Marilyn in this. I don't think she goes back that far.
No, yeah.
But well, this is just so exciting. And so, what would you say you see your target audience as?
Well, you know, basically, we are really targeting people beyond any one genre. I mean, there in a sense there's something for everyone. There's adventure for the sort of the Dan Brown style reader. There's international intrigue and adventure. There's the explorations between science and spirituality that is similar to what was in Contact. But we also target to a certain extent not only the readers of, say, like Michael Crichton or Stephen Hawking, but also to a certain extent the readers of somebody like Deepak Chopra, where not necessarily hardcore religious believers, but the kind of people who believe in science, but that believe that there are paradigms of science that are shifting. In other words, that some of the things that are now viewed as, in other words, things like out-of-body experiences and things like that, that there may be actual physical and physics causations for that kind of thing. So, you know, basically anybody who likes action and adventure, anybody who likes science-based thrillers, and anybody who is interested in, say, like the kind of belief systems of somebody like Deepak Chopra.
That's me.
Yeah. Okay,
I'll be the first one in line to buy a ticket.
And I brought you a copy of the book too.
Oh my
so
gosh!
there you have.
Thank you so much. And will you autograph that for me too?
In fact, I had one that was autographed by me and my brother. So yeah, it's doubly autographed. Yeah.
That's fabulous. So tell me how you and your brother were inspired to even get into this whole creative world of creative writing and writing and joining together, forces together.
Well, and that's a story in and of itself, the collaboration, because we're actually very close as brothers, but we also have kind of an occasional oil and vinegar dynamic. He's the older brother, so of course he views himself as the boss in many dynamics. Yeah. So you know how that is.
I do. I have an older sister.
Yeah. Okay. And so originally, again, the idea for the book, I think, was highly inspired by Carl Sagan's Contact, and then I basically wrote out about a 50-page kind of cinematic treatment, if you will, of what I imagined. The original idea just came to me like, wow, there's blood on the Shroud of Turin, and they're always talking about how you can clone things from blood. Where could that lead? And so I kind of let my imagination run wild and wrote up about 50 pages of stuff, and then he and I started brainstorming based upon that. And then we thought, well, let's, write some sample chapters and see how this pans out, And so we occasionally wrote things totally individually, and sometimes we wrote things sort of collaboratively. And little by little, it grew and grew and grew, and ultimately it was a whole book. So.
How exciting!
Yeah. And it was not always without its trials. The occasional phone hang-ups. How it is with siblings.
Right. Well, at least though with brothers, I mean, I don't have any brothers, but I'm assuming just from dating men and having men friends that I'm guessing a hang-up for you guys would be maybe 5 minutes later saying, "Hey, you want to go get a beer?"
Exactly.
Where with sisters or girlfriends, we wouldn't talk to each other for 5 years.
Yeah. Or you'd say, I was up all night thinking about what you said.
I couldn't sleep for 5 years, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is so great that you two are able to come together and appreciate each other's creativeness.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be able to do that. And then, of course, the big question would be, and I hope you don't mind me asking you this, but do you believe in God?
Well, and that's often a question that's asked, and I think you have to couch the answer to that within the context of the kind of old world, old man on a throne up in the sky with the beard versus at the opposite extreme. Well, and of course there's ultra atheists, but then there's this sort of in between of what is often called the God of Spinoza, which is, what Einstein often said he believed in, which is sort of the totality of all the laws and principles of the physical universe. And he saw sort of almost a divine kind of like the Force of Star Wars within that context. So I think that's more where we come from. In other words, we're not necessarily saying like an interventionist supreme intelligence that's guiding human affairs, but something along the lines of the Force that you can kind of tap into and draw, maybe like a global mind wisdom. So I think that's more of our orientation. But again, the book is written from the perspective of questioning all of these things. It's not basically imparting dogma. It's sort of like, well, let's discuss this and see what people think. So,
leaving it open to interpretation for the viewers.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Now, this seems like it might be a good time for you to read a little.
Okay, that would
from
be
your
great.
Book, if you don't mind.
Sure. So let me hold on.
Now it's available now.
Yeah, it's available. In Sonoma, you can get it at Reader's Books. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it.
Barnes and Nobles.
You can order it at Barnes and Noble. There's a Kindle version if you're into ebooks.
Gosh.
Yeah. So basically, any way that you would normally get a book, you can get this. You could walk into a Barnes & Noble and order it. So
when did you start writing this? The two of you?
It took us about 5 years to write it. I mean, we both had day jobs, so
Yeah.
it was it's a 400-page book. So that doesn't that doesn't happen overnight. So.
No, it doesn't. Even
Yeah.
though there's 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Even if you were to write one page a day, I mean, still,
Yeah.
it's you have to kind of how many retakes?
A lot. There was a lot of rewriting and a lot of tweaking, and we've often said, even when we do readings, we'll be reading something. It's like a movie script. Often you'll hear stories about actors who will say, like, I can't deliver this line. This sounds so false.
Yes.
I've got to change this.
Exactly.
And so in the same sense. Even today, we will do some reading and we'll look back at a chapter that we've written and think, well, you find yourself crossing off a word or tweaking it a little bit. So, it changes even as time goes by. So
As time goes by, that would have been a great cue for that song, had I only known. So imagine it in your minds, listeners, as time goes by, as Steve is about to read something special from his book, The Shroud.
So in this section, in order to better establish a chronology of the Shroud of Turin, the lead character, Dr. Robert Strickland, who is an MD geneticist, travels to the Middle East and genetically samples a Bedouin tribe from the Negev desert region of Israel. So here we go.
Okay.
That evening, they wended their way along one of the passages in the encampment to the large tent in the center. Their guide, Habib, led the way with a kerosene lantern that threw flickering shadows on the tent walls as they passed. Everyone they saw nodded respectfully in deference to their position as dining guests of the sheikh. Inside the octagonal tent, the air was scented with cinnamon. Flickering candles lit a low wooden table set with dishes of roasted lamb, rice, kofta, freshly baked bread, and bowls of thick red and green broth. The sheikh's piercing eyes glinted in the dim candlelight. He gestured to Strickland, patting the pillow beside him. Habib sat on Strickland's other side to translate, and Franklin and Nurse Saleh sat across from the three men. Habib introduced everyone. Abdul Bar, said the sheikh, bowing slightly to each of them, with his hands on his heart. They replied in kind. Bob, Strickland said. Bub, the elder repeated back with relish. Despite the language barrier, Abdul-Bar proved to be a charming dinner companion, regaling them with tales of his adventures and conquests in the desert as a young man. I learned very early that the desert has a soul, a power, he said, his eyes glinting in the golden light. The wise man merges with that power and learns the ways of its strength. The fool does not, and is destroyed. Strickland found himself occasionally averting his eyes from the old chieftain as they conversed. His gaze was almost too soul-searching. It was clear why the man had risen to his position of leadership, for he possessed a palpable energy and charisma. Across the table, Franklin and Saleh conversed at length about the role of the World Health Organization and their mutual interests in disease prevention in the developing world. Strickland found himself momentarily pulled in by the discussion. Then the sheikh spoke directly to him, pausing to let Habib translate. I can often see into men's eyes, he said, without a hint of egotism. I sense that the desert also speaks to you, and that this journey is about more than just your science. Strickland looked back at him without speaking, and the old man placed his hand on his wrist. At once, Strickland felt a palpable warmth enter his body. As he looked into the old man's eyes in the flickering candlelight, he felt suddenly disoriented, though not unpleasantly so, as if time and place had been cut loose from their moorings. You will find what you seek, the old man announced, but not here, not yet.
I love how you describe everything. It brings such a visual to the front of my mind, and I was swept away by that. And I think, to me, what's important is, do you plan on doing an audio version? Because I love instead of reading, I love to lay back and hear audio versions so I can really be swept away and take it all in. And have you thought of that?
Yeah, we're actually planning that. Yeah, I mean, we haven't found sort of the ultimate reader for it yet. But
what about you? I thought that was wonderful.
Well, I tend to think that there are, I tend to think that it's more of a male-based reader kind of book, but that I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Mm-hmm. In other words, I also find it hard to find the time to sit down and read a book. So I'm always out and about and listen to a lot of them. And when you hear a really good audiobook reader, you just like go, wow, this guy is I mean, it's like a dramatic, it's like an acting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a play. So we do want to find somebody to do that. So.
That's great.
Yeah. But I agree. I think that it really lends itself to that kind of stuff.
Gosh, it really does. And I'm curious, have you ever seen The Shroud of Turin?
No, we have not. Though, ironically, we've pointed out to several people when I was 10, and I guess my brother was about 13. We lived in Torino, as we called it, Italy, for a half a year. My dad was a college professor, and so neither of us had ever even heard of the Shroud of Turin back then. For some reason, it was not in the cultural kind of zeitgeist. Even though we were living there, nobody ever mentioned it. It was decades later that I'd ever even heard of it. So we did live there, but we never saw it and had never heard of it when we lived there.
So are you then half Italian? Part Italian, all Italian?
No. Well, I think we're mainly German and French, so not that much Italian. We just ended up there somehow.
Did you like it?
No, actually not. My brother liked it a lot. I totally hated it. At the age of 10, you just want to be with your friends. You don't want to see the world and be uprooted. And it was a very Dickinsonian. We went to like a British boarding school. I mean, it wasn't really a boarding school. We went home at night, but it was strict in that sense, sort of whapping your knuckles with rulers and stuff.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was not something I look back on fondly.
Right. Oh my gosh! Yeah. I think what we're going to do for fun, we're going to go to a Sinatra tune right now, and we will be right back with Steve Meloan. And we're bebopping here on KSVY. Actually, it's Sonoma Sun FM. You can stream us 24/7 at SonomaSunFM.com. And I am here with author, writer Stephen Meloan. And we just got his brother on the line to join in on the conversation about the Shroud. And hello, Michael. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. I'm really enjoying this interview.
Great. And you're all the way down in L.A. right now. Is that true?
I am, yes.
So, what would you like to add to the conversation?
I'd like to add that I didn't know that Frank Sinatra had ever recorded that track that I associate with James Brown.
Interesting. The Prisoner of Love?
Yeah. That was an interesting version.
Wasn't it? I actually had never listened to it before, but I thought it might be kind of appropriate with the discussion that we're having here tonight.
Yeah, I wonder when that song was written. Do you have any idea? Does it say?
It was probably back in 1970.
Okay, so then hard to know who did it first. I was thinking if it was like a standard that maybe Sinatra did it first and then James Brown.
Right. Now, what's so cool here, I can't see you, Mike, but of course, I've got Steve here, and he's got like a cool hat on, like a Sinatra hat. So, are you paying tribute to Sinatra?
I'll tell you what I have.
What do you have on?
Skull and Crossbones boxer shorts. They're black. And a T-shirt, and that's it. No shoes, no socks, nothing else.
Oh, that's great. Isn't it wonderful to do radio from your own home? It's fabulous. And to work from home while you're doing all this writing, you don't have to dress up.
Well, and he's down in L.A. It's very cash down there.
Oh, right. Do you go to appointments very cash, too?
I go to appointments wearing a Speedo and flip-flops, and that's it.
Love that visual. You guys are very visual people. I love it. And I have a great imagination.
That's how I roll in my neighborhood.
In the hood.
In the hood. Yeah. I love it. So, okay, I am looking at the book cover right now, and it conjures up a lot of, thought here as to what exactly does that tree represent. Is that the tree of life, or who? Mike, would you like to take? Mark, would you like to take that?
Is it Mike? Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah. Go.
Well, I think we had many goals with that graphic. That it represents an oak tree, which figures into an aspect of intrigue that's woven through the book. And it also represents neuronal connections, as in the mind or the nervous system.
Okay.
Yeah, so
it's
meant to look a little bit like a brain.
That's what I thought.
And then those little lines are kind of like internet network connections.
Neurons and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared
They're
that.
sort of, well, yeah, it was a good question. They're sort of a kind of a cyber internet-based group woven through the story called the Neoterics. So they're convinced that technology is going to sort of take mankind into a new era of spirituality beyond sort of the dogma of ancient organized religions that they feel sort of gone astray, into sort of a lot of sectarian dogmas and moralistic stuff. So, yeah.
Well, you two would be the perfect guys to ask this question to then. What did you think about December 21st, 12? That was supposed to be the end of the world of
12,
the Mayan
12,
calendar. 12-12, right, 12-12-12.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So what did you guys think about that?
I'll let you take this one, Mike.
We can always pass on to another question.
I wasn't planning for anything cataclysmic to happen. I'll tell you that. I hadn't stocked up on a lot of canned goods or. And I wasn't expecting the heavens to open up and to be sucked into a new realm of. No, I wasn't. But I do think certain dates and mythic forms are a chance for people to kind of reset their goals and their lives, and I think it serves a valuable purpose in the sense that it's a way of kind of moving yourself forward toward new goals and new vistas, let's say. Mm-hmm. So I think in that sense it can be kind of interesting and useful to envision change and markers for change. But I certainly wasn't expecting that anything. I wasn't expecting anything cataclysmic to take place.
You didn't drain your bank account then?
Right.
Well, something did happen for me in my life. It was pretty wild.
In what way?
It was unbelievable, actually. So I decided I wasn't going to go anywhere that evening. I had a friend, Narda, who was performing that evening, and I wanted to just stay home just in case if something was going to happen. So I was one of those people that, yes, I did prepare. Just in case. I've learned throughout life better to be safe than sorry because you don't know. We don't have any guarantees in life of anything. So I had gone to bed, and I think it was around 2 in the morning. I woke up with what sounded like huge war bombs dropping and going off. Sonic booms were happening, and I thought, I woke up startled, and I thought, oh my God, this is really happening. This is really true. And it was so frightening. It was so frightening. So I went outside, and what I saw was it was lightning and thundering. It was and just like out of the blue. It hadn't even, been thundering and lightning. Yeah. And then I saw come down to the ground this big giant bolt.
Wow.
And then a big huge ball about 24 by 24 lit up, and it was just like right off the ground there, about maybe 100 yards away from me in the parking lot. And I was looking at this thing thinking, what the heck is happening here? I've never seen anything like this. I've seen a lot of other things in my life, which I would love to get together with you guys and, create another book, a novel from. But it was pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing. And some other things have changed since then. So perhaps for people who believed that something was going to happen, it was shown to them that something did happen. And for those who maybe didn't believe, they didn't see anything.
Well, that's an interesting perspective.
That is an interesting perspective.
That's really pretty deep, actually. Yeah.
I think that opens up the notion of intent and also synchronicity and how synchronicity can interact with your life. And when Steve was talking about the God of Spinoza and how that it doesn't interact with the affairs of man, I think occasionally the God world can interact. I think it generally doesn't, but I think in some instances it can.
Well, I agree, and what I was referring to was sort of like the sense of a supreme God on a throne who's kind of like Zeus, who's controlling humanity. Yeah, like pulling puppet strings, as opposed to that you can sort of potentially tap into the cosmos through intent and kind of alter events in your life and perhaps others through and there are even some physicists that sort of more forward-thinking physicists that think that there could be some truth to that you actually can alter the physical universe beyond your own body and your own mind through conscious intent. So
True. And actually, when I was a little girl, I had a surgery, 3 surgeries on my left eye, lazy eye, they called, term. And during one of those operations, I had a near-death experience.
Wow.
Well, of course, I was only between 5 and 7, so I didn't know that's what it was at the time. Yeah. But I remember floating to the ceiling and then just stopping there and looking down and watching the doctor, kind of frantically working on me there.
Wow.
And but to me it wasn't frantic. It was just I'm watching. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'm looking at myself there in the bed, and the doctor's working on my eye, and and then I ended up coming back. But I will tell you, for the rest of my life, so I don't know if it happened before I was born or because of this incident, but there's a lot of things throughout my life that I have seen and known were going to happen before they happened.
Wow.
So those are the things I'd love to get together with you guys.
What you're describing is incredibly, it's been experienced by many people. I think what happens is when human consciousness brushes up against the so-called zero-point field, or the God world,
or death,
some of that touches you permanently, and the membrane becomes more permeable between you and that realm, and then you become more attuned.
Well, and in fact, I just finished reading a book by a very, Johns Hopkins trained woman, MD, all about ESP and psychic abilities, and she says that sometimes people who have had near-death experiences, it actually does imbue them with abilities permanently beyond that. Right. In other words, it somehow alters their brain in a way that they have abilities that they didn't have beforehand. So, yeah.
That's been reported many times. Yeah.
The sad part is that throughout my life, when I would see things that were going to happen, and there was no doubt, it's not like I was just thinking about that thing. No, it's there. It's it was just there in my mind, and I knew it was going to happen. Good, bad. There's been good, but a lot of really horrible, worldly, tragic things, and some personal and family. And so the sad part is that I can't stop it.
Yeah.
So I remember I went through a really hard time thinking, why are you showing me this? Why do I get to know all this information, but yet I can't do a damn thing about it?
Yeah.
Except for witness it and then be hurt 10 times more. Mm-hmm. That was the hard part. And I'll tell you one thing that there's so much more, but I'll tell you this one thing. So one of my sisters, she was going to get married to this man who they were both working at Lucasfilm at the time, working on CGI. And So we were going to meet him for the first time. They had gotten engaged. And so he came over to the house. And the moment he came into the house, there was this enormous love and connection that, I'm sure everybody felt from him. But I'll just say, I felt that. I felt that he was a genuine guy. And you could just feel this love. Mm-hmm. And so we sat down at the dinner table. This is my mom and my dad and myself and my sister, Sandy, and Ralph. And and by the way, I have to just also put out there, I don't drink. I don't do drugs of any kind. So it's not a hallucination because of some drug-induced state. So I was just hum-de-dum, enjoying this. Oh, my God, this guy's great. I'm so happy for her, feeling the love, feeling happy. Out of the blue, all of a sudden, Ralph, who is a big guy, disappears to me. And all I see is like dots where his body, which would make up his body. And I freaked out because I had never seen that before. I've seen other things, but I've never seen that before. And so I had to excuse myself from the table, and I ran to the back of the room and started crying and panicking. And my mom came back, and it's like I'm trying to figure out what the heck does this mean. And she said, come back. Don't you dare say anything. This is Sandy's, person she's going to marry. We don't want to upset anybody. So I came back and I sat there again trying to just like ground myself. And it happened again. Okay, long story short, sadly, I had a couple of dreams about him and her a couple weeks later before their wedding, which were not good. And I said, something's wrong. They're not supposed to be getting married, and something devastating is going to happen from what I saw in my dream. And my my mom said, don't say anything. Don't say anything. She's so happy. Don't disrupt this, So the next morning, 6 a.m., I got a phone call from my mother. And at the time, I just bit my tongue. At the time, I was actually living with them in a back room, and they called me at 6 a.m., which was very odd.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing calling me at 6 a.m.? Where are you? They said, we're at Sandy's house, and unfortunately, Ralph died last night.
Oh, my God.
He had a heart attack. He was only 34 years old.
Wow.
And he had an enlarged heart.
Wow.
So I know things, but it's still upsetting, but I think at some point, instead of getting really upset about it like I am again now, is getting together with guys like you and maybe creating a novel or a movie about it. I have a long list of things.
Wow.
Shocking.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think in that instance there was nothing you could do, and also you didn't quite maybe trust the impressions that you were getting. But I think some people, in fact, Mike has a friend who that he knew, I don't know, I think in the 80s or whatnot, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, whose father was an airline pilot. And she had this, when she was a little girl, just like begged him not to fly that day, like said, don't go, and she had never done something like that before. She was not an acting out kind of kid. And she was so adamant and so nearly hysterical. He said, okay, sweetie, I'll call in sick. I won't go. The plane crashed,
Gosh.
So, you occasionally hear things like that where it does change the future in a sense, So, yeah, it is kind of amazing.
And in that case, I'm sure there's nothing anybody could have done, but I'm wondering if in certain circumstances, if you had an experience of clairvoyance like that, if you could use meditation or some kind of intent to slightly alter outcomes, or I don't know. I mean, maybe that's possible. It could be, but there are some circumstances that have so much momentum that it would be very hard to alter the course of them.
True.
Yeah. So sometimes you can change things, and other times not. But I agree. It's kind of a torturous thing, an experience like that. To
Right.
Wow. Extremely torturous. Well, to bring it around to a good point is that eventually, my sister went through hell. We all went through hell, and after his passing, and finally, at some point, I was seeing him in my visions and dreams, and I decided, after my mother told me several times, don't share with her what you saw. I decided, you know what, she's she's under her desk at this point in the fetal position, and they're calling in a priest, and she needs a lot of help. And normally she was always been the strongest sister of the family. She's always been the tomboy, the strong one.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I said, I have to tell you, I'm sorry if this is wrong. Please forgive me. And if you hate me for this, please forgive me. But I have to tell you this. And I told her what I saw and what Ralph had told me to pass on to her in my vision. And she looked at me and she said, nobody ever knew that.
Wow.
Only Ralph and I. So I believe you. And then she asked me for help to be able to connect with him. And eventually, within 3 months, it worked, and everything, her life was moving up into a positive direction again. Wow. But yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but I like the idea of the meditation to calm myself and to, put out there, something that a positive thought, a prayer, to give it up to God, to do what I can't do.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Since you have this gift, I'm wondering if you meditate every day, and if that can deepen it or make it more, deepen the possibilities of intent.
Actually, I don't. But I would tell you what, throughout the years, it's kind of a funny personal thing, but it would always be when I was PMSing, when I was feeling things intently.
Well, that would make sense, too. I've got to get you this book by the woman MD, because she talks about all this kind of stuff, and it can be hormonally driven. It can be something, her point is that actually that more primitive animal forms maybe had, as an evolutionary sense, more intuitive and ESP-like abilities, and that we lost those abilities to a greater extent with our higher brain functions, because we became more that logic and sort of planning and thinking became predominant in the human being, as opposed to, say, like dogs or something, where you'd have sort of a more intuitive, almost being able to slightly read the minds of other creatures in terms of danger and whatnot. And that sometimes when people have either near-death experiences, or they have like even strokes, and it will dampen down some of those brain centers, and you can do that, like Mike was saying, through meditation, and enhance those more ancient kinds of abilities that's meditation
quiets the cerebral cortex and allows
the frontal
more underlying functions to come to the fore, so that you can get in touch with some of those abilities and aspects that Steve was just talking about.
So I think there's a lot of different ways that you can get to those abilities, either through meditation or I think yours came about through that NDE that you had.
Right. And I normally don't talk about this because I know some people feel funny about it. And yet again, here we are on air talking live to everybody who's listening. But at the same time, this book kind of brought it out in me, the Shroud, and I am hugely connected with Jesus. And that's why I feel, it brings me back down to the ground in a sense, even though it's spiritual, so it lifts me up. Yeah. But I feel protected, and I feel that it's a beautiful thing to have Jesus in our world. And then, again, the two of you, Meloan and Meloan, be writing about, these subject matters, because it's really something that fascinates me.
Well,
and I'm sure a lot of other people.
Given what you've told us this evening, I think you'll really find the book interesting. I think it's totally up your alley in terms of the explorations.
And you really asked great questions, too. I really enjoyed this interview.
I agree, yeah.
Thank you so much. Now, are you going to be there Thursday night for the exciting reading over at the Epicurean Connection?
He is not, yeah.
I'm not, no.
Yeah.
You will be there in spirit, though.
Yeah. that I will.
Yeah.
Well, you'll be the orb floating around.
Yeah, I'll have an iPod with an iPad with his face on it.
Perfect. That's going to be great. So again, for all of our listeners who want to join the fun Thursday night, it starts at 7:00. The Epicurean Connection is just hop and skip a rock throw away from the radio station here on West Napa Street, and quite a few creative artists are going to be there reading and performing. Besides Steve Meloan, Lisa Summers is going to be there. Daedalus Howell is going to be there. A lot of locals who have been just a huge, just positive light, inspirational light in Sonoma. And it's expanding. We're expanding throughout the world through radio and the internet. And I would love to see the place filled and meet everybody who finds the same things I find fascinating.
Well, it seems to it's becoming kind of a gathering spot. It seems, they've started a regular series of readings there, and you heard about maybe 6 months or so ago, Woody Allen was filming a movie in San Francisco, and he came up for lunch at the Epicurean Connection. I read in the local paper, so
I had no
even
clue.
he heard about it somehow.
I need to start reading the papers.
Yeah.
Darn it. Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't know everything. Sometimes when people say, well, if you have ESP or an intuition, then tell me this. Well, it's like, it's not 24/7 on, it's not like a light switch. I can turn it on and off. It just comes to me. Things come to me.
Well, and that's this woman doctor I talked about, Diane Powell. That was one of the things she pointed out, which is the difficulty of kind of studying things like that in using the scientific method, because people with abilities like yours, you can't just sort of switch it on. You can't like sit down in a lab and they go, okay, do your thing,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we only have a couple minutes left, so I would love to ask both of you if there's anything that I haven't covered in the book that you would like to share or read, maybe a little final paragraph or two of your book. I would love to have you do that. Steve, I don't know if you have anything in front of you, Mike, but Steve has something.
I don't have any reading materials in front of me, but Steve, would you like to take it out on a short reading?
Yeah, I have a short additional reading we can do, and then you and I can both say our farewells.
Okay.
So this second section here. Again, the genetic researcher Robert Strickland, he lives in Rockville, Maryland. He works for the National Institutes of Health, and this takes place outside of his Rockville condominium. After a few hours' sleep, Strickland woke, unable to stop thinking about the potential porphyria trigger sequence within their study. He padded out to the courtyard of his condominium building, slipped on a mask and snorkel, and floated face down in the warm waters of the large oval swimming pool. Focusing on slow, even breath, he watched the ghostly intertwining patterns of light on the pool bottom. The iridescent shapes were impossible to lock onto, constantly in motion, merging and morphing in response to every tiny disturbance on the surface. As he lay still, the water calmed, and the hypnotic beauty and symmetry of the shapes intensified. He had always believed that every aspect of nature held answers, if only we could interpret the data. Everywhere you looked, tantalizing secrets were on display, from the mysterious way birds flocked and moved en masse, to the elegantly programmed social behavior of insects, to the streaming of cytoplasm within a cell. Each reflected fundamental scientific principles, yet the overarching insights often felt just out of reach. All you got was the teaser, the intuitive sense that extraordinary treasures lay veiled right before your eyes.
The book is filled with treasures, and that was a beautiful teaser, Steve. Thank you so much. And Mike, it was such a thrill to meet you on the phone here. Thanks for calling in.
It was great. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's really been a lot of fun.
You're welcome. And you have a fabulous website, the both of you, called theshroud.net. So
that's it.
And the SHROUD. And is it always spelled the Shroud? Is there any other spellings?
No, that's the normal, just the www.theshroud.net.
.net.
Right.
Well, feel free, everybody, to go on there and read more information about the book, and you can pick it up at the Epicurean Connection. Are you going to be doing autograph signings?
Yeah, I'll have some books there.
Perfect.
Yeah, and for people in Sonoma, they can also get it at Reader's Books. They have it there.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much again for joining me this evening.
Thanks a lot. It was really a lot of fun.
Thank you. It was really an interesting conversation. Really loved
Good.
it.
Well, I hope to have more with both of you off air soon.
Okay. Good.
Likewise. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
And please join me next week and every Tuesday for Some Like It Hot on Sun FM.